Hello everyone, welcome to episode 58 of Short For You, where today we'll be going over episode 12 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, Part 1. Now this episode was phenomenal, especially as a Yuta fan. The Yuta fans ate well today. Okay, so first we start the episode and we see as Yuta is kind of going around collecting up citizens and taking them to safe places during the cooling events and the Sendai colony, the cooling game events in the Sendai colony, so that as few lives can be lost as possible. And this is after he killed Druve in the previous episode. And so he goes and he's taking them about, and then he sees, whilst under a bridge, telling them to go to the stadium, that he sent Rika over there to defend them in the stadium. He sees a horde of cockroaches just coming at him. And so slowly they're coming, and eventually it gets hit by the horde, and he realizes that these are devouring people. And so we see as he slowly fights his way through the horde, and he realizes that these insects are made of cursed energy. And eventually he ends up finding the host, which is Kurourushi, that's his name. And it's a cursed spirit, and it is a cursed spirit in the cooling games. It is actually going to gain points in the cooling games because it's a more intelligent cursed spirit. And so he goes about it, and eventually he ends up having quite the duel with it. It ends up sending these twin tornadoes of cockroaches after him, some biblical level stuff. And it ends up ultimately with him and Kurourushi in a field in which he eventually grabs Kurourushi, and Kurourushi's beating the crap out of him. He's cutting him up and all that good stuff. But then Yuta's okay, because his main goal throughout all of this was to not use Rika or his reverse curse technique. However, he ultimately ended up having to use his reverse curse technique, where he grabbed Kurourushi by the face, gave him a big old smooch, and killed him with reverse curse energy. Reverse curse technique. But then after that, we ultimately see as him and Uro end up coming into contact. And Uro is a curse user, a female reincarnated curse user, who can use air as a surface. Her curse technique turns air into a surface. So in One Piece when Whitebeard uses his Gurugura no Mi and it shatters the sky, that's kind of what hers looks like, but it's more on actually focused on that rather than quaking the earth. She's not a Gurugura no Mi user. But yeah, so I believe it's Gurugura no Mi. That's what it is. But yeah, so ultimately see as her and Yuta start fighting, they're throwing down, and eventually while they're throwing down, we see as Ryu Ishigori. Yeah, Gori, there we are. It's Ishigori. But yeah, so we see as Ishigori ends up shooting a blast at him while they're fighting. And then eventually Yuta ends up going and fighting Ishiguri while Yuro's off because he ended up beating her up a little bit, giving her the 1-2. And then we see him and Ishiguri fight. Now, while he's fighting Ishiguri, we learn that the reason why Ishiguri Gori reincarnated was because though he had lived a satisfied life, he'd had a wife, he'd had battles, he'd had about anything that he could have wanted, he never had dessert. And this is why he reincarnated, because he wanted to be fulfilled. He wanted to have his dessert. He wanted to have his cake and eat it too. But, even though I know that's not how that's used, but yeah. So, then he ends up going on and eventually fighting with Yuta. And this fight is phenomenal. It is top tier stuff. And we see they're throwing down. And eventually, Yuro and Ishiguri end up they're not allies, but they end up reuniting against Yuta, and they're all kind of throwing down, and Yuta's okay, I can't do this anymore, so he summons in Rika. And we get a little breakdown of how Rika works. He puts on his ring, which is a really cool scene because it shows almost a manga panel of him putting on his ring, but it's colored a little bit. But yeah, we see he puts on the ring, and we learn that Rika has a 5-minute timer, and it essentially allows, we know this since we've seen Yuta in Zero and all that good stuff prior. But he has 5 minutes to use Rika. It amplifies his cursed energy, and he essentially has a storehouse within Rika. And we see as he pulls out some tools, he pulls out this nano suit sleeve and a mouthpiece, which allows him to use cursed voice. What's it called? Cursed speech. There we are. And so we see as he himself first goes against Uro, and he ends up using cursed speech on her, which causes her to stop, and then Rika comes out and just pummels her. And we see as Rika goes crazy on Uro, because Uro is a woman, and she harmed Yuta, so they're just throwing down, going crazy. But then we see Yuta and Ishiguri end up fighting, and they're throwing down and it's just really good fighting. We see as Yuta is kind of packing him up, and then Ishiguri ends up packing him up, and we see at one point where they're in a tunnel, and Ishiguri's trying to corner Yuta so he can hit him definitely with his beam. His granite blast, the one from his pompadour. Is that Jose Higashikata? No. No, it is like I said, it is Ryu Ishiguri. But yeah, and so we see as he shoots this down, but Yuta ultimately ends up dodging, and then while Ishiguri, after this, his head cannon overheats and it causes his hair to go limp, and then out of nowhere, Yuta pushes a train over on bro while he's combing his hair back into his pompadour, and eventually ends up fixed, and then they start out fighting again. But then after that, we just kind of see some more of Rika and Yuro fighting, and then eventually Yuta ends up fighting with Yuro again, and Ishiguri ends up kind of fighting a little bit with Rika. But then, while they're fighting, eventually, I guess to the point where Yuta ultimately ends up essentially beating Yuro by using Daru's technique, and she learns that Yuta's curse technique is copy. And so she's beaten, and then then Yuta is able to cut off Yuro's arm with Daru's ability, and then Rika ends up eating her arm, and then Ishiguri comes out of nowhere and he's like, yo, bye-bye, and he blows them off with his granite blast. And so now we just have Yuta and Ishiguri left. Now this fight is phenomenal. But, well, okay, hold on. Actually, I forgot to tell you about an event that happened before this. But before all of this happened, they actually at first had an encounter where all three of them were fighting together, and this is a little bit before we see Yuro getting blasted off. But they all three get together, and they all three summon their domains, so we get like a big black sphere. However, out of nowhere comes Kurorushi again, and he just penetrates it, and this causes all of their barriers to break, and they all come down. Eventually, Kurorushi's just beat again. But yeah, then we get the events that lead on to Uro eventually getting beat. So then we see as Ishiguro and Yuta fight, and this fight is phenomenal. The animation's phenomenal, and just everything is perfect. Peak fight, one of the best fights, like, I might say ever, because that fight was awesome. Like, it was awe-inspiring, jaw-dropping, whatever you want to call it. But, but the main thing that made it so awe-inspiring was Ishiguro and Yuta are about to do like a beam clash, and we see as Ishiguro prepares his Ishiguri prepares his head cannon to blast, and Yuta's preparing his cursed energy blast as well, and they blast together, and then Aizo starts playing. Aizo's the intro, and it's a very hyped song, so it was so sick to see this playing while they're beam clashing and struggling. And we just see as they get back into fighting again and all that. And while Aizo's playing in the background, it's phenomenal. Like, it was a phenomenal choice. A wondrous, beautiful choice by Mappa to do this, because holy smokes, was it great. Phenomenal fight. I'd say phenomenal 8,000 times. It was good. It was great. It was wondrous. It was magnificent. It was marvelous. All of the good stuff. It was a great fight. Tony the Tiger sounded all right there. But it was deserving of that. Great. But, yeah. So we see this. And they're fighting, and ultimately, what Yuta starts using against Ishiguri is I'm just gonna start calling him Ryu. Honestly, Ryu's just easy to understand. I know we're halfway through, but not halfway through, we're almost done. But yeah, so him and Ryu are fighting, and he starts using Uro's ability against Ryu, and he, like I said previously, that Uro's ability was the ability to turn air into a surface, and so he's trying to reflect Ryu's blast from this, which actually ends up working, and that's ultimately how he ends up defeating Ryu. And through all this, we're seeing as Ryu's kind of reflecting on his enjoyment of this battle and how he's finally getting to experience dessert and fulfillment due to this battle with Yuta. So that was just really cool, and I loved all that. And eventually, we end up seeing them after the battle, where Ryu is laying on the ground and Yuta is beside him, and we see Ryu say that Yuta was too soft because he wouldn't kill him, but he also then reveals that he didn't kill Yuro either. Well, that his granite blast, Yuta actually went and found Yuro because Ryu's granite blast wasn't strong enough to kill her, and he ultimately ends up getting them to give their points to him. And we then go off with them being united and ready to go for an eventual development on in the fight. And now Yuta can make another rule since he has over 100 points. He has 190 points at the end of this. But yeah, then we just kind of get a brief look into what everyone else is doing around. We see Yuji and Takaba running around. We get a brief look at Sukuna, but it's nothing big. And yeah, that's all 28 minutes of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3, Episode 11 of Part 1. Episode 12, not 11. But yes, that episode was so worth it. It was so, so good. This season, honestly, has been probably one of the best seasons of anime I have ever watched. Because it has been solid throughout. Like, there's been, like, zero misses, actually. Now, yes, I believe it was episode 5 where it was just strictly story building. That was slow, but it wasn't bad. Like, it was building a good story. And I mean, the Cooling Games is already one of my favorite arcs in all of Shonen, so it's just so beautiful to see it renditioned in such a way that's just so satisfying to me as a fan. But yeah, I cannot wait to see what they do with part 2. I'm ready to see some more of Kashima, because Kashima's a cool character, and I like his lightning abilities, so it'll just be really cool to see that later on. And I'm ready to see when part 2 will actually come out, because as of now, I believe there's going to be a discussion about it on the 28th of March at like some anime expo, because I'm pretty sure that's when we're getting more Steel Ball Run information. And I don't know if the Naruto remake's getting anything, but yeah, so we're going to be getting more information, I believe, on the 28th about that. But yeah, that was phenomenal. The season was great. I loved this season so much. I can't wait to see what else Mappa does, because Mappa is such a phenomenal studio. I know they're overworked. I know they're like essentially sweatshop workers, but golly, are they masters of their craft. Straight masters. There is nothing less that could be used to describe them, because they are the most beautiful artists, the most intelligent, like, story building, action building, all of that good stuff. So yeah, I cannot wait to see what more they have for part 2 when it inevitably comes out. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about episode 12 of Jujutsu Kaisen Season 3 Part 1, and all I really have for episode 58 of Shelf Review. So yeah, thank you very much for watching.